I found my husband's second phone on a Sunday morning in February, wedged between the driver's seat and the center console of his car. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for the ice scraper. That detail matters to me, even now. I need you to know I wasn't the kind of wife who went looking for trouble. I was the kind of wife who scraped her own windshield while her husband slept in, who made the coffee before anyone asked, who told herself that a quiet marriage was still a good one. I was 31 years old, and I had spent 4 of those years convincing myself that what I had with my husband was enough. His name doesn't matter anymore. I call him what he was, my husband, past tense. That part, at least, is finished. What isn't finished? What I carry with me into every new morning, into the apartment I rent now, in a neighborhood where nobody knows my name, is the memory of those Tuesday evenings, the ones that started so ordinarily and ended with me waking up on the couch, groggy and disoriented, with no memory of how I got there. It happened the first time in October. We had my mother-in-law over for dinner, which was its own kind of exhausting. She had a talent for looking at everything in our home and finding it slightly lacking. The kitchen could be cleaner, the wine could be better, I could be thinner, quieter, more grateful for the life her son had given me. I cooked all afternoon. A whole roasted chicken, roasted root vegetables with maple and thyme, the kind of dinner that makes the house smell like something worth coming home to. By 8 o'clock, I remember feeling strange. Not sick exactly, more like the edges of the room had gone soft. I thought I was just tired. I'd been working long shifts at the clinic all week. I sat down on the couch while my mother-in-law was still talking. And then I was waking up to the sound of the door closing and my husband standing over me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You fell asleep?" he said. "I'm sorry," I said. "I don't know what happened." He smiled. It was a small, careful smile. "You've been working too hard," he said. "You just need rest." I believed him, because I wanted to, and because what else was I supposed to think? It happened again 3 weeks later. We were hosting his colleague and the colleague's wife, a couple I'd always found slightly exhausting, the kind of people who talked about real estate as though it were a personality. I made pasta from scratch. I opened a good bottle of wine. And then, somewhere around 9:30, the same soft edges, the same slow dissolve. And then, I was waking up in bed with no memory of having walked there. Did I really fall asleep again? I asked my husband the next morning. "You've been burning yourself out," he said, not looking up from his phone. "You need to see someone about your sleep." I made an appointment with my doctor. She ran blood work. Everything came back normal. She suggested stress management, more iron, maybe cutting back on caffeine. I nodded and thanked her and walked to my car and sat there for a long time in the cold, thinking, I am not tired. I am not stressed. Something is wrong and I do not know what it is. By December, it had happened 4 times, always on evenings when we had company, always after dinner, always just me, never my husband, never whoever we'd invited over. I started keeping a small notebook in my purse. Dates, times, what I'd eaten, how I'd felt going in. I didn't tell anyone I was doing this. I wasn't sure what I was documenting. I just knew I needed to. My husband had started suggesting I see a therapist. "I think you might be dealing with some anxiety," he said one evening in the particular tone that people use when they want to sound caring while saying something unkind. "It can manifest in really unexpected ways, even physically." I didn't argue. I had learned, somewhere in the middle of our marriage, that arguing with him was like pushing against fog. You put your hands out and there was nothing there to push. January came. We got through the holidays with his family without incident. I barely ate at Christmas dinner. I'd had a headache all day. And then, in the new year, he started talking about having people over again. His colleague and the real estate wife, his mother, a couple from the neighborhood he'd apparently gotten friendly with while I was at work. I remember standing in our kitchen in early February, the week before the Sunday I found the phone, looking at the list of dinner dates he'd suggested and feeling something cold move through me that wasn't quite fear and wasn't quite anger. It was more like clarity, the slow arrival of a thought I'd been trying not to think. The dinners were the common thread, the dinners and me losing consciousness at them, and my husband explaining it away with the patience of someone who has rehearsed his lines. I didn't say anything. I went back to my notebook. That Sunday, the temperature dropped to -22. My husband was still asleep when I went outside to start the car and look for the ice scraper. The phone was wedged between the seat and the console, face down. I almost didn't pick it up. I told myself later that the only reason I did was that it looked like my phone. Same case, same color, and I thought I'd left mine in the car overnight. It wasn't mine. I stood there in the driveway with the engine running and the cold biting at my face, and I looked at the phone in my hand. It was locked, but the screen lit up while I was holding it. And in the second before it went dark again, I saw the preview of a text message. It was from a contact saved as a woman's name, someone I didn't recognize, and the preview said, "Did she go down last night or not?" I put the phone back exactly where I found it. I went inside. I scraped the windshield. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table and I breathed, slowly, until my husband came downstairs and poured himself a cup and said good morning like it was any other Sunday. "Good morning," I said. My voice was perfectly even. I surprised myself. I called my older sister from the clinic on Monday during my lunch break. She lives in Calgary, which felt far enough away that I could say the words without them landing too close to home. I told her what I'd found. I told her about the dinners. I told her about the notebook. She was quiet for a long time. "Do you have a lawyer?" she asked. "No." "Get one before you do anything else," she said. "Don't touch that phone. Don't confront him. Don't let on that you know anything. Just get a lawyer first." It was the best advice anyone has ever given me. The lawyer I found was a woman who worked out of an office above a pharmacy on Bloor Street. She had the kind of calm that comes not from being unafraid of things, but from having seen enough of them. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she folded her hands on the desk and looked at me steadily. "We're going to document everything," she said, "and you're going to be very, very careful." She referred me to a private investigator, a woman who had previously worked with the OPP and who now operated a small firm out of Mississauga. I met with her in a coffee shop off the highway. She had a quiet, methodical manner that made me feel, for the first time in months, that I was not losing my mind. She asked me everything. What I ate at those dinners, whether I drank wine, I did, always, my husband always poured it, whether there were any moments when my glass was unattended, whether my husband ever brought me something from the kitchen separately from what he served the guests. That stopped me. "He always brings me a glass of water," I said, before dinner. "He says it's because I never drink enough water during the day." She wrote something down and didn't say anything for a moment. "I want you to do something for me," she said. "Next dinner you host, I want you to accept the water glass, but don't drink it. Pour it into a plant, pour it outside, tip it somewhere, just don't drink it. And I want you to call me immediately after." I went home and I looked at my husband making dinner, and I watched his hands and I thought, I trusted those hands. I thought those hands were safe. The next dinner was a Friday in late February. Two of my husband's work friends, a couple who'd recently bought a place in Oakville and wanted to show off photos of the renovation. I cooked. I set the table. My husband poured the wine and, right before the guests arrived, he came into the kitchen and handed me a glass of water. "You need to stay hydrated," he said and kissed my cheek. I smiled and set the glass on the counter near the sink. When he went to answer the door, I poured it down the drain. I ate dinner. I drank wine. I talked about the Oakville renovation and laughed at the right moments and helped clear the plates. And when 10 o'clock came and went and I was still sitting upright at the table, alert and present, I felt the cold clarity from the driveway come back, but stronger this time. Sharper. I excused myself to use the bathroom and I texted the investigator 3 words, "Nothing tonight." Confirmed. She called me the next morning. "We need to look more closely at the water," she said. "I have a contact at a lab. I need you to get me a sample if you can. Do not attempt this if you feel unsafe. If you think he's watching, let it go. Your safety is the only priority. It took me 2 more weeks. One evening when my husband was out, I found a small bottle of what looks like a supplement in the back of the cabinet above the refrigerator. The high shelf, the one I could barely reach. The one he'd always said was too awkward for everyday use. It was an unmarked amber bottle. I photographed it. I took a small sample with the kit the investigator had sent me, and I put the bottle back exactly as I found it. The lab results came back 10 days later. The investigator drove to meet me in person. She sat down across from me in a coffee shop in Etobicoke, and she didn't make me read the report myself. She just told me what it said. Clonazepam, dissolved, in concentrations consistent with causing sedation in an adult woman of my size, my weight. A benzodiazepine, she said, prescription medication. Someone is dissolving it and adding it to a liquid you're consuming. I remember looking out the window at the parking lot. A woman was loading groceries into a minivan. A kid in a snowsuit was dragging his boots through a half-melted puddle. The ordinary world, continuing. Is there anyone in your life who has access to prescription benzodiazepines? She asked. I thought of the text message, the woman's name saved in the phone. Did she go down last night or not? I think so, I said. I think I know who. My husband's closest friend. I had always found her presence slightly uncomfortable in a way I'd never examined closely. Worked as a pharmacist at a dispensary in Scarborough. She and my husband had been friends long before I appeared. They had lunch together regularly, which my husband had always framed as entirely ordinary. I had told myself I was not the kind of wife who made problems where there were none. I told the investigator her name. I told her about the lunches. I told her about the text message and the name on the contact. She was very still for a moment. You need to let me and your lawyer take it from here, she said. I mean that. Don't call her. Don't call him. Don't give any sign that anything has changed. What happens now? Now we go to the police. I want to be very clear about what happened next, because I've seen versions of this story where the woman does something reckless, goes into the woods, confronts the person alone, creates a dramatic scene in a parking lot. I understand the impulse. When you have been drugged in your own home by someone who kisses your cheek and tells you to stay hydrated, the rage is enormous. It is a physical thing. It takes up all the space in your chest. But I had a lawyer, and she had told me from the very first meeting that the only thing that would protect me, legally, financially, personally, was letting the process work. So I let it work. The detective I spoke with was a woman with the Toronto Police Service who specialized in domestic cases. She was direct and thorough, and she did not minimize anything I said. She reviewed the lab results. She reviewed the photographs. She spoke with the investigator. They built the case quietly, over 6 weeks, while I went to work and came home and cooked dinner and slept in the same bed as my husband and said good morning and good night, and acted as though the world was exactly what it appeared to be. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning in April. I was at the clinic when my lawyer called. She told me in the even, careful tone she used for delivering significant information that my husband had been taken into custody. His friend, the pharmacist, had been arrested at the dispensary 2 hours earlier. I sat down on a chair in the staff room and looked at the wall and did not say anything for a while. Are you all right? My lawyer asked. I think so, I said. I think I just need a minute. The charges were serious: administering a noxious substance, criminal harassment, conspiracy. The pharmacist faced additional professional charges through the Ontario College of Pharmacists, which would conduct its own separate investigation into how the medication had been accessed and diverted. In the weeks that followed, I learned things I hadn't known and things I had half known and been trying not to know. The relationship between my husband and the pharmacist was not a friendship. It had not been a friendship for some time. The plan, the sedation, the pattern of it, the slow accumulation of an apparent history of medical fragility was, according to the Crown's theory, intended to establish grounds for a legal process that would have been very much not in my interest. I won't go into the specifics of what they intended. I will say only that my husband had taken out a significant insurance policy on my life 18 months earlier, during a period when our relationship had seemed, to me, to be going through a rough patch we were navigating together. We were not navigating anything together. My lawyer filed for divorce the same week as the arrest. The matrimonial home, a semi-detached in the east end of Toronto that we'd bought together 4 years ago and that I had spent 4 years making into something worth living in, went through the settlement process over the following months. I was entitled to my share. I received it. The insurance company, when the policy came to their attention through the criminal proceedings, conducted their own investigation and voided it. They did not owe me anything. I did not expect them to. What I received, ultimately, was something simpler and harder to quantify. I received the truth. I received proof that I was not anxious, not fragile, not burning myself out. I was a 31-year-old woman who had been drugged in her own home by her husband and his accomplice, and I had noticed, and I had documented it, and I had done exactly what my sister told me to do. I got a lawyer first. The trial concluded the following spring. My husband received a federal sentence. The pharmacist lost her license and received a separate sentence. The details were reported in a small piece in the local news. The kind of story that gets a few shares and then disappears. I didn't share it. I didn't need anyone to know. I am 32 now. I live in a neighborhood I chose for myself, in an apartment where I know all my neighbors' names and where the only person who decides what goes into my water glass is me. I have a cat who sits on the windowsill and watches the street with the focused intensity of someone who takes her responsibilities seriously. I have friends I call on Sunday mornings. I have my sister in Calgary who picks up the phone every single time. Last week, someone at the clinic asked me how I was doing. Really doing, the way people ask when they actually want to know. And I thought about it for a moment before I answered. I'm well, I said. And I meant it. And that, I think, is the part no one could have planned for. There's a version of the story where I never pick up that phone, where I leave it wedged between the seat and the console, grab the ice scraper, and go back inside to make coffee, where I spend another year falling asleep at dinner tables and being told, gently, that I need to rest more, worry less, take better care of myself. I think about that version sometimes, not with fear exactly, more like the feeling you get standing at a crossroads in the dark, realizing only afterward which path you were on. What changed everything wasn't luck. It was a habit I built without really naming it. The habit of paying attention even when I was being told there was nothing to see. I kept a notebook. I wrote down dates. I noticed the pattern when everyone around me was invested in me not noticing. That kind of clear-eyed honesty with yourself, refusing to explain away what your gut already knows, is something I had to fight for. My husband was good at making me doubt my own perception. So was the story I'd told myself about what our marriage was. Choosing to trust what I observed over what I was told to feel took more courage than I expected. And then there was my sister's advice. Get a lawyer first. Don't act. Don't confront. Don't let the anger make your decisions. That discipline, sitting across from my husband at the breakfast table for weeks, saying good morning with a steady voice while carrying what I knew, is the thing I'm most quietly proud of. Not the dramatic moments, the ordinary ones, the ones where I chose patience over the relief of confrontation. Doing the right thing in the right order, even when it was almost unbearable, is what made the case hold. It's what meant the outcome was real and lasting rather than satisfying, for 5 minutes and then gone. The investigator, the lawyer, the detective at the Toronto Police Service, none of them could have done anything without what I brought them. The photographs, the sample, the notebook with its careful, undramatic entries, the evidence I gathered not because I was brave in some cinematic way, but because I was methodical. Because I understood, somewhere beneath the fear, that my credibility was my most important asset, and I couldn't afford to spend it carelessly. I think about the women who don't have a sister who answers the phone, who don't know that lawyers exist for exactly this, who are told over and over that they are anxious and tired and making something out of nothing, and who believe it because they have no reason not to. Those women stay in that version of the story, and that thought is the one that stays with me the longest. What I know now is that the life I have, the apartment, the cat on the windowsill, the Sunday morning phone calls, the sense that the space around me is genuinely mine, came directly from a series of choices made under pressure. From doing the harder thing instead of the easier one. From trusting my own mind when someone I loved was working hard to dismantle it. None of that is complicated exactly, but none of it was simple either. I was 31 and I thought I knew what my life looked like. It turned out I was only just beginning to find out.